What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. And in this video today we have a lot to discuss on the Nintendo Switch 2, including brand new info not yet shared by anyone regarding the possible SOC for Switch 2, and you'll also see why I'm showing Cyberpunk 2077 here as well. So if you are excited about this, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, since as time moves forward this type of content will continue the more we have others putting out information that I feel I need to either discuss, clarify, or share new updated information on. Now, we will go into detail regarding these updated performance and power rumors of the Switch 2, as well as DLSS 3.5 Ray Reconstruction, since a lot of the sites and videos out there are getting quite a bit of information confused in regards to what this could potentially mean for Nintendo's next-gen console. And we also will be talking about Nintendo themselves pretty much confirming, without confirming outright, that we are heading into a next-gen transition year from the Switch OG to the Switch 2, and backwards compatibility may in fact be confirmed as well. So first off, let's talk about Nintendo giving one of the most clear indications that we are heading into a transition year with Switch OG to Switch 2. In a recent interview by site Inverse, they asked Doug Bowser about all these reports of Switch 2 being shown to developers behind closed doors with a probable release of 2024, and also asked, and I quote, "Do you think about helping those who are on the Switch console transfer to the next platform while reassuring them that the content and investment in the Switch will somehow transfer to a successor?" And in reply, Doug Bowser said, "Well, first I can't comment, or I won't comment, I should say, on the rumors that are out there, but one thing we've done with the Switch to help with that communication and transition is the formation of the Nintendo account. In the past, every device we transitioned to had a whole new account system. Creating the Nintendo account will allow us to communicate with our players if and when we make a transition to a new platform to help them ease that process or transition. Our goal is to minimize the dip you typically see in the last year of one cycle and the beginning of another. I can't speak to the possible features of a new platform, but the Nintendo account is a strong basis for having that communication as we make the transition." So there you have Doug Bowser mention some things in regards to that question by Inverse, with Bowser mentioning that they want to minimize the dip we usually see in the last year of a console cycle going into a new one first of all, and which gives us a big indication that this is exactly the direction we're heading in for 2024. Also, he said in regards to that content and investment question that they want to use the Nintendo account to make this transferring over process very easy, which would really encourage current Switch users to move over to the new console a lot faster if they know their content will move with them. This has been very successful, for example, for PlayStation 5, which is now outselling the PlayStation 4 launch line thanks partly to that feature. PlayStation users have no reason to not move over to PS5 when they get all their games coming over along with them, in addition to brand new content on PS5. So for Nintendo, and from what Doug Bowser said here, it sounds like they want to also emulate this type of approach for Switch 2, which I think would be a great idea and keep players moving into the new console, basically with one well-kept ecosystem, which we'll hopefully be seeing revealed in the next few months. Now, next up, let's talk about these new updated power and performance rumors for the Switch 2 that a lot of people have started talking about, and quite frankly, have reported on some of these things either incorrectly or simply from a perspective of not knowing much about the information they are trying to report on, which has happened a lot over the past few years at least for channels and sites that cover Nintendo. Now, of course, we all make mistakes, myself included, but I do try my best to put links in the description supporting exactly what I'm discussing if there's any questions or not understanding from my audience. So dating back to early September, there was a report from VGC and Eurogamer, both corroborating that Switch 2 dev kits have been sent out to multiple developers, and on top of that, an impressive graphics demo of The Matrix Awakens was shown to developers behind closed doors at Gamescom on target spec hardware of the Switch 2 to show what the console was capable of, but also they brought out in that article that from their contact at VGC, which kind of confirms that they themselves didn't see the demo, but said that their contact informed them that the demo is said to have been running Nvidia's DLSS upscaling technology. Now, there is no mention of DLSS 3.5 or Ray Reconstruction from that article, so this is where it gets a little unclear on a couple things. And if you watched my videos in the past, you know that I'm trying to warn you guys multiple times that what will often happen with these reports, and it's happening here again, is that when you get a legit report from a big well-known website like VGC or Eurogamer, you'll then get these follow-up rumors that are not from them, not from those original sources, but from people who are piggybacking their own rumors that are usually far less trustworthy, since otherwise those sites would chime in and confirm the info was correct, which almost never happens, of course. Now, I want to make clear that this info might be correct and it might not be correct, but it depends on a few factors, and a lot of clarification needs to happen on DLSS 3.5 and Ray Reconstruction in particular to shed light on what is going on with Switch 2's power and performance. So, this rumor that came from the Nate the Hate podcast about DLSS 3.5 Ray Reconstruction is one of those rumors that, if you look at the information already available from the VGC report, is a rumor that is basically a quote-unquote, well, duh, of course Switch 2 will have DLSS 3.5 Ray Reconstruction. And why do I say that, you ask? Well, that's where we get into the ifs and the ands part of this info. If the VGC report is correct, and the Switch 2 is using an Nvidia SOC that is based on anything that is past 2018 onwards, which is when they started the Nvidia RTX line of graphics cards, and the info going way back to 2021 from GPU leaker Copite, who basically narrowed down, but not really leaking per se, but narrowing down, that the Nvidia T239 chip is what Switch 2 will use because it was a numbered chip that Nvidia skipped back then in 2021 and didn't use. And I'll say again, they didn't use it back then. However, I have discovered, and this is the brand new information I want to share with you guys today. I haven't seen anyone else share this, but I have discovered that the Nvidia T239 chip is actually being used by Nvidia right now, and they have started using it back in July 2023. This chip T239 is now being used as another variant for Nvidia's Jetson AI computer modules for robotics. The GPU leaker Copite said back in 2021 that the Switch 2 will use the T239 because it was a custom chip. So now I'm questioning how accurate that info was, of course, since Nvidia is now using that same chip for their own products pretty much as a yet another stock chip in their line of chips designed for robotics and AI, as I'm showing here in the Jetson diagrams here that's been released publicly. However, I definitely want to make clear that I am not saying that the Switch 2 is not using the T239 chip at this point. All I'm doing here is updating what the current usage is for that chip, since right now it's being used by Nvidia for its own products, and since this was made back in 2021, I question personally if Nintendo is actually using that chip or if they've gone with something else totally customized for their needs. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but this is all very interesting to say the least. Either way, like I've always said, all I want is something that performs well for Nintendo in 2024. So whatever way Nintendo gets there and whatever chip they use is fine by me. So this is why I had to explain all this, because there is now a lot of questions and side info we have to explore to get all the way back to if Switch 2 will use DLSS 3.5 and Ray Reconstruction. If all those things are correct from VGC, including it being a newer Nvidia chip based on anything past 2018, like we said, starting with the RTX 2000 series GPU line, then yes, of course, Switch 2 will be capable of DLSS 3.5 with Ray Reconstruction. And the funny thing is that this wasn't actually something that was even necessary to be rumored by that podcast due to it already being common knowledge by any tech enthusiast that follows Nvidia, which also leads to my next point of if people really understand what DLSS 3.5 does in the first place and why it's kind of irrelevant to how impressive that Unreal Engine 5 demo was on the Nintendo Switch 2 that was shown behind closed doors, and I'll explain why. First of all, good news is Epic Games has re-enabled that Matrix demo for consoles, so you can actually play it again. So I've got some new updated footage of it and it looks great. So here's the interesting thing about that Unreal Engine 5 Matrix demo. That specific demo was not designed to showcase DLSS, and it was not designed to showcase ray tracing. It was created to showcase Unreal Engine 5's potential with its amazing virtualized geometry system called Nanite, which is what allows the core of that demo to look so impressive. That, in combination with its global lighting system called Lumen, smart procedurally generated AI with NPCs and cars, and its own form of DLSS using temporal super resolution, all those things made that entire demo what it was. Nothing that was being highlighted in that demo was showcasing ray tracing. Now, don't get me wrong, ray trace reflections are in fact in that demo, but you have to go looking for them. They aren't something that will make or break the demo though in terms of how great it looks overall, in my opinion at least. This is why when you hear stuff like, oh, they use DLSS 3.5 with ray reconstruction to make that Matrix demo look so good on the Switch 2, it really raises some questions only because that demo simply wasn't a showcase for that technology in the first place. Ray tracing isn't what quote unquote made that demo looks so amazing. The original report from VGC only said they were using DLSS to upscale the image. It did not report anything about DLSS 3.5 ray reconstruction, and after re-examining that Matrix Awakens demo, it actually really wouldn't make any sense for them to use that anyway. It would simply be an added cost to degrade the performance in a demo that wasn't looking to showcase ray tracing in the first place. So I hope that makes sense. Also, in regards to DLSS 3.5 with, we'll call it RR for short, people need to remember that currently only Cyberpunk 2077 uses that in combination with path tracing. And yes, of course it looks awesome for sure, but you're talking about needing a $2,000 plus PC to get that running at anything acceptable in frame rates. And just because Switch 2 has the potential to use DLSS 3.5 RR doesn't mean it could actually run it well in a lot of games. Like for example, if you try running Cyberpunk 2077 on something like a 2080 Ti from years ago, which is still a decent GPU overall, with ray tracing on plus DLSS 3.5, ray reconstruction, and path tracing on, the game is probably going to run around 20 frames per second at 1080p or so. It's just something that is so new at this time, you still need a beefier PC to run it well. Of course, on top of that, we know that Switch 2 won't be doing any kind of path tracing. So for other games, could a DLSS 3.5 with RR be used? Well, and the answer of course is yes, but at what cost is the question. Remember, the Switch 2 has to prove it can even do ray tracing at all at acceptable frame rates, even without DLSS 3.5 RR. And it's something we still have to see when they reveal it. Now personally, I think it probably can use ray tracing in games in a limited capacity. But when you look at the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, which are substantially more powerful than what a Switch 2 will be since it will be portable, all the games except for the new Spider-Man 2 on PS5 have ray tracing disabled if you want to play at 60 frames per second. If anyone's expecting a Switch 2 to be any different, then you're going to be very disappointed, I think. If anything, we are going to be seeing the majority of Switch 2 games without ray tracing enabled, or simply things like reflections with ray tracing. Conversely though, I believe image upscaling is going to likely be the factor for Switch 2. Not stuff like DLSS 3.5 ray reconstruction, which is being treated right now as a novelty of sorts, kind of like the gravy on top of an already good meal, right? It's not something that is needed for a Switch 2 to have amazing looking games. And on a portable screen, the chances of you being able to see or tell the difference get smaller and smaller. Here is an example of Cyberpunk 2077. And by the way, all the footage I've shown in this video is with ray tracing completely turned off. Keep that in mind. So the core really of what makes Cyberpunk 2077 look great is not ray tracing necessarily. It's the actual assets themselves. It's the already greatly designed real-time lighting system, its amazing particle effects, its mesh and texture quality, and the art design. All those things make it look great. Now, of course, when you add ray tracing on top of that, the game is going to look bleeding edge, which it does. So for a Cyberpunk 2077 port on Switch 2, for example, what I'd expect is a similar experience to what consoles have. A 60 frames per second performance mode and a 30 frames per second quality mode. With quality mode having some ray tracing, but also bear in mind that even the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X versions of Cyberpunk don't even have full ray traced reflections. They have higher quality screen space reflections, the only ray tracing effect being for shadows. So suffice to say, on Switch 2 we'd be lucky to get ray tracing at all on that game, but perhaps shadows will be using ray tracing, who knows. So yes, I guess that DLSS 3.5 could potentially give shadows a cleaner look, since what DLSS 3.5 does is basically add a second form of DLSS to an already upscaled image, with it just being focused on ray traced effects being higher quality. So in a game like Cyberpunk on Switch 2, since the big boy consoles PS5 and Xbox Series X only use ray tracing for shadows, basically there's no reason to even have that turned on for the Switch 2 port. If and when it does happen, you're not going to probably tell much of a difference. Overall, in today's landscape of gaming, ray tracing is used at a very, very low degree, much lower than PC games. The main thing you'd see DLSS 3.5 be used to great benefit would be in reflections, and right now all we got is Cyberpunk 2077 as an example. At the end of the day though, most are going to prefer the 60 frames per second performance mode of these Switch 2 ports anyway, which would essentially turn off all ray tracing effects. Once you play a game like Cyberpunk 2077 in a crazy action firefight at 60 frames per second, you'll likely never want to go back to 30 frames just for some extra graphical flourishes that you might never notice, especially on a portable console like the Switch 2. Honestly as well guys, for me personally, I'm a little tired of sites like Digital Foundry who use the words like, oh, this looks way better when comparing ray tracing on and ray tracing off in modern games, since truly in this day and age, both screen space reflections and ray tracing can look great. It's how they are used in the game that matters. The most things someone will notice usually while playing a game is going to be the lighting effects, right? And in games like Lords of the Fallen, for example, that uses Lumen and Nanite in Unreal Engine 5, you will hardly notice much of the reflections anyway if they're ray traced or not, because the lighting and the effects take over the majority of what you see on the screen and it looks great. So in summary, for the Switch 2 to look impressive, it's not going to be just due to DLSS or FSR or even DLSS 3.5. It's going to come down to how well it can run ports with the original assets of the games intact, meaning all the textures, geometry, lighting effects, particle effects, etc. Now, after all those things are in place, if a developer has any room left to squeeze out of the Switch 2 to add ray tracing, then I think it would be something that would come at the very end of the porting process, if that. Now, if Nintendo is releasing a PS5 and Xbox Series X home console that was just focused on TV play, then I could see them having a system that would do more of the bells and whistles of the competition. But for me personally, I'm keeping my expectations in check and hoping for good running ports. And if ray tracing is something that can be done, great, but it's not something that should be expected to be performing better than a PlayStation 5 in that sense. I just don't think that's realistic, guys. Sure, for example, DLSS 3.5, it's possible, right? But I think if anything, we'd see something like that in Metroid Prime 4, since if any developer could do that, it would be Retro Studios. So if anything, it would be a Nintendo first-party game that would show the best, as you would expect, of what the Switch 2 can do. Don't be expecting way too much from these AAA third-party ports. The most I'm expecting is just something they run on par and look good enough to be enjoyable on your Switch 2 console. So yeah, it's a lot to consider, and we touched on a lot of tech here, but hopefully it all made sense. We all just want a great new console by Nintendo that plays the newest games well, and I'm sure the Switch 2 will be able to do that with or without ray tracing, which again should be seen as something additive and not required to have a great looking game. And that goes for any platform, PC as well. I know a lot of people that simply play with ray tracing turned off even on high spec PCs because it's simply just an added performance cost that doesn't make that much of a difference visually in most games. Alright, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.